Yeah, for me, the answer is a definite yes. I feel European. I identify as European before identifying as French, which is my passport nationality, if you like. And that's the result of the sheer luck I've had in my personal life, which is that, I've been able to live in different European countries. I have lived more than half my life outside of France. I have lived all of my adult life in the UK. I arrived here when I was 17. And these opportunities really fostered a sense of identity that is much, much beyond just feeling French, really. Because a lot of the opportunities that I got in life are linked to the fact that these days in the European Union, you can live anywhere and you can make a living and start a life anywhere. And that's very much related to who I am as a person. So I definitely feel European, and having these opportunities, to live in different countries. I mean, they made me become friends with people from so many European countries, from Poland, from Italy, from Germany, from the UK, from Spain. It made me develop, really close friendships with people that perhaps I wouldn't have been able to meet if all these freedoms that we are given in terms of movement, in terms of living, if they hadn't been given to us. And so that definitely fostered my sense of European identity. I would definitely mention the 2014 European parliamentary election. And that's because I was young and idealist at the time, and I was campaigning for the French Socialist Party in these elections, which, at the time was the biggest party in France, barely exists anymore. And it was the first election to really make use of the Spitzenkandidat sort of system whereby the president of the European Commission would be chosen among the party that would come out on top of these elections. So it was quite an intense campaign for that. I remember finding myself in Martin Schulz's meeting. I remember canvassing in Paris outside the metro and just doing door to door and all these sort of things, which was really quite formative, not only in terms of learning about these political techniques, but also I guess in terms of talking to people about the European Union, about European elections, which could sometimes be depressing. It was often a very easy scapegoat. We were often verbally attacked by communists who saw us as traitors to the leftist cause and who had a problem in that respect with the European Union. But it was also sometimes very encouraging, because that's where you realise that when you took the time to talk to people, a lot of the vindictive vocabulary just calmed down, and then you could end up having a real conversation about the European Union with people. In general, that was incredibly formative. It's between two, really. And obviously the instinctive answer would be Brexit. And I think Brexit was really tough for me because I feel European, but I also really love the UK, and I feel it has become my country of adoption. And so I think it was really a heartbreaking moment, really, when just the UK not only decided to leave, but also I'm talking about the climate after the European referendum up until now, which I feel has become quite burdensome for a European like me, with, like press campaigns about sending gunboats and scapegoating the EU, ads, government ads about getting ready for Brexit and these sort of things, and the turpitudes of getting my settled status and all of that. But the reason I might not make it my worst recent European moment is that from a purely selfish European perspective, I don't know how awful Brexit will be. I think it's definitely awful for the UK. But for Europe, part of me thinks he might somehow even reinforce the EU because of how poorly Brexit has gone down, I'm hoping that it sort of deters other countries that might have been thinking about it. And I mean, I don't know if there's a direct link, but in France, for instance, the Front National have moved away from their platforms of getting France outside of the EU. I think in general in the negotiations, the European countries have stood very united in their stance in these negotiations. And so, in terms of the consequences for the EU, I'm not sure it will be such an awful moment, as selfish as it sounds when it's said like that. And that's of course not to undermine the fact that there's going to be frictions to trade, and people will definitely lose out in the EU as well. But I think that there is also a possibility for Europe to grow out of this. And so instead of Brexit, which was my first instinctive answer, I think I'm going to name as my worst European moment in recent history the sovereign debt crisis in the early 2010s. And I think it's easily forgotten that at that time there was a lot of talk of, the EU imploding, the EU not being a thing anymore, the Eurozone not existing anymore. And that was really quite stressful. There was this all brinksmanship and last-minute summits, and there were so many last-minute summits, and countries not being able to agree on rescue packages and fiscal policy and monetary policy. And it was, very tense, and it became a real prospect that the EU might not exist anymore, which I found really dreadful at the time. And I also didn't like there was a sort of nasty atmosphere with, for instance, the emergence of the so-called PIG acronym to talk about southern European countries, which I found really disdainful and not great taste at all, really. And I didn't like this atmosphere of, scapegoating the southern European countries. I didn't like the fact that a lot of people were suffering in countries where huge austerity was imposed, and many countries that saw Europe positively starting to suddenly question it, and so the rise of far-right parties as well. And so for me, this whole sovereign debt crisis and the consequences it has, I think it has to be the worst European moment for me, the one that I would choose. I like a lot the initiative taken, I think it's by the European Parliament, to fund inter-rail passes for young people turning 18 in Europe, in order for them to travel Europe by train for cheap. I think that's an amazing idea. I think that's an initiative that I would have loved to benefit from when I was 18. And I think there is still some sort of, selection criteria to access it. And I very much hope that they will broaden the initiative as much as possible with as few selection criteria as possible in order to make this initiative as widely, applicable as possible. I think it's a great idea for people to just, a bit similar to Erasmus, if you want, inspire people to just get to discover Europe and discover other countries and foster their sense of perhaps European identity as well. It's funny because I was on the European Commission website recently to do a bit of research for my own personal work, and that's when you realise the EU actually does quite a lot, and perhaps there's a communication problem around it, because when you go to the European Commission website you realise of how much is actually done, and even someone European like me, or who feels European and informed, doesn't know a whole lot about everything that's going on there. But if I had to pin it down to a single most important achievement, that would definitely be, freedom of movement, freedom to live anywhere in the EU. That's something I've massively benefited from. As I said, I'm living in another country than mine, and that's entirely because at the time the EU made it possible. And I just like having the prospect of perhaps in my career living pretty much anywhere. I would love to live in different European cities. I would love to live in Berlin, for instance. and there are many other cities that attract me. And I think just the idea of thinking that my job market is not restricted to a single country, but literally any of the wonderful cities in Europe. If I find a job there, I can just go there and live. I think that's absolutely amazing, and that is the most important achievement for me in my personal life. There's a lot of things I hope the EU will achieve in the next decade. I would say I would just come back then to my own specialty, really, which is social policy. And I really hope that by 2030, the EU will sort of have developed more of a social security program at EU level to protect citizens. I think it's really important for citizens to feel a sense of belonging, that they have a sense of protection from the EU, and whether that would be, for instance, a form of basic income or more support for the unemployed. I think, that would be my main hope for the EU, is to develop a stronger link with EU workers, and not only workers, but the EU population in general, in terms of protecting them.